Well, good morning and good afternoon to everyone who's joining us across the country for today's webinar on email strategies for modern recruiting and sourcing. My name is Stephen, and I'm here with my colleague Ian Alexander, and we are with a company called Telemetry, and we're excited to have you guys on our webinar today. Just so that you know, Telemetry is a software company, and we are delivering recruitment and marketing and sourcing solutions that work together with your ATS. And so that's a little bit of our background. We want to encourage you to ask questions. Use the panel on your right-hand side to ask questions as we go through today's seminar. And we'd be happy to pick up those questions either in context if it makes sense, or toward the end of the broadcast as well. Before we jump into the actual agenda, just quickly introduce ourselves. Again, my name is Stephen. I come from about 18 years of recruitment background, starting as a headhunter way back, and moving into operational management roles at Fortune 500 companies. And I've been working with our clients here at Telemetry for about 3 years, and I'm joined by Ian, who is our Director of Marketing, and he's also been in the field for quite some time and brings a lot of wisdom here. So good morning, Ian. Good to have you today as well.
Good morning, Stephen. Glad to be here and glad to talk about email strategies for modern recruiting and sourcing, because it's something that I do a lot of. So looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, let's begin and share the agenda. So I have to say I'm really happy to have everybody on the call today, because emailing is not the most interesting, exciting thing to talk about, and yet so critical to everything that we do around sourcing and attraction. So we're going to talk today about just what is an email campaign, what's anatomy, what's it made up of, what are some key success criteria you want to shoot for when you're developing an email campaign. We want to talk about lists and segmentation. Now, this is kind of a hot button for me. I get a lot of emails from lots of different companies every week for jobs that are just all over the place, and I wonder what they're doing for their lists and segmentations if they're sending me the types of offers that they're sending me. So we'll talk about how to create smart lists, how to segment for the appropriateness of your email campaigns. We'll talk about the offer. Right, so what are we shooting out there to the general public? What's the offer? What do we want them to do in terms of a call to action? We'll talk about some creativity, about creating conversation through the email campaigns. We're going to talk about sourcing versus nurturing. Right? What's the goal of the campaign? We'll talk about some metrics so that you know that that your campaign are hitting the mark and are producing what you need to produce. We'll do a couple of really quick client examples, and then obviously both at the end, but also if it's appropriate, we will answer your questions as they come up as well. So let's talk real briefly about types of emails. It's a little bit obvious, but I think if we need to begin thinking about this so that we kind of segment out in our heads what's important to us from a sourcing and attraction perspective, right? So obviously you do have individual outreaches. This becomes important to not only sources but also recruiters, because they may be reaching out from their ATS, they may be reaching out from a CRM tool, but they're really reaching out sort of one-to-one, or let's even say one to a few. So that's kind of an individual outreach. I found your resume. Are you interested? Can we talk? That sort of thing. Then, of course, we have autoresponders. These have been around, since ATSs came in, right? Give me your email address and what types of jobs might you be interested, and we'll send out some alerts, or once we've got your application, we'll send you out that autoresponder. Don't you love the autoresponder that says, hey, don't respond to this autoresponder? But we're going to really talk more about sourcing campaigns and nurture campaigns. So these are campaigns where on the sourcing side, we're looking to reach out to a larger swath of folks. I like to call them the top of the haystack, as they will, if you will. People that are generally in the right target audience, people that might generally be interested, and just beginning to create that conversation. Nurture campaigns go a little bit deeper than that, and we'll talk about that. These are folks who I kind of have a good understanding that these might be appropriate, they might actually be qualified, and they might at some point be interested. How do I nurture them to keep them interested? So as we talk about email campaign, what are some of the components? So first of all, we talked about a target list. Who am I going to send this email to? And you want to talk about, want to think about, where am I getting my target list from? A lot of our clients will get their target lists, begin to get their target lists from past applicants. I mean, think about everybody who's sitting inside of your ATS who have applied for jobs over the years. And they may be really recent. They may go all the way back. We've got clients that have databases of upwards of 12 million people, and sometimes that data goes back 5, 6, 7 years. So how do they create target lists from data that's large? We also have clients that will purchase lists, right? It's where they're looking, let's say, for instance, in the healthcare field, they're looking for RNs in a specific geographic region. They might purchase that list and then upload it into their CRM so they can create that target list. So that's a key component. Another component is the offer, right? What are we offering them? We have to think about that. What all of us have one thing in common on the call today is that we offer careers, right? We offer opportunity. We offer jobs for folks that are looking to make a change. So how do we present that offer to them? And then there's the creative, right? So how do you build the creative aspect, not only from a subject line perspective, right? Getting their interest so they don't click delete before even opening up the email. The body, is it engaging? Does it create some interest? Does it create a conversation? And then their call to action. Conversion pages, so perhaps the call to action might drop somebody onto a career portal, for instance, and then the analytics. So I send out a campaign, and what actually happened as a result of that campaign.
Right. So as you look at these various components of the email campaign, you start to figure out what are the most important. And I just wanted to highlight the 40-40-20 rule for anybody who hasn't heard it before. And that's really that any campaign that you send out, is your response rate is going to be determined by, and that's the number of people that respond, going to be determined 40% by how good of a target list you have, right? So have you created a target list that is full of the right people? It's going to be 40% determined by the offer that you provide. And we'll talk a little bit more about offers. As Stephen said, we all have sort of potential jobs that we're offering, but you need to go a little bit deeper. You think about offer, think about it in consumer terms, right? So I may be selling shoes, but for my particular campaign, if I were to just offer some great shoes, people may not respond right away because they can get great shoes at any time. So that's where you see things like buy one, get one free. You see things like, if I have a subscription service, maybe I have a free trial for that. You need to really think about your offer so that it goes beyond just your jobs and is more compelling, is maybe time-bound, and has some incentive for people to act right away. And then finally, 20% is determined by the creative. So if you break this down, as you're looking at where to spend your time in terms of getting a really winning sourcing campaign out there, particularly, 80% of the success of the campaign is going to be on how well you chose that target list, how well you crafted an offer, and how well you matched those two things together. In other words, you have the most compelling offer for the right people. So once you've got that, then you can start to focus on, okay, what's my subject line going to be? Is it going to be clever? What do I do in my email? Am I going to, am I making sure that I have the proper, open with a question, incite at the end of each paragraph, end with a sentence that leads people to the next paragraph. Those kinds of ins and outs of creating emails are really only 20% of your success. So spend most of your time getting the right offer to the most appropriate target list. One of the biggest sort of mistakes I see with both marketers and recruiters is spending, it's great to spend a lot of time on that email, but really don't do it at the expense of the most important things. So we talk about target lists. Homegrown lists are always best. Your internal list, whether that be from your ATS, maybe you have, kudos to you if you have a talent pool, a centralized talent pool within your recruiting department. If you have a talent network where you're allowing people to opt in to receive information from you for future jobs, even emails within your recruiters' inboxes, that they've been sort of corresponding with people about past jobs, or CSV files, Excel files from events that you've done. All of those combined are going to pull much better, and when I say pull, I mean get better response rates than any other kind of list. So, so always be focusing on your internal house list, and be focusing on growing that over time, because multiples better response rate from that particular target. Now, the second place that you can get lists is third-party lists, where you would go out to a list broker and rent a list to go out after. Now, you're going to get a lower response rate from a list like that. That doesn't mean that there's not a place for that within the overall mix. You continually email to your internal list of past applicants, etc. You're going to get declining response rates, and you're not going to be expanding that list, growing that list for future emails. So I would say about third-party lists, you have to be a little bit careful. One, expect a little bit a much lower response rates, and two, always rent from reputable list brokers. And again, for anybody who has not worked with a list broker is basically an organization that goes and contracts with various communities, publications, associations to represent their lists and rent them out on their behalf. So you may have an association, just to take Stephen's nursing example, you may have an association of nurses, and that association helps fund itself by allowing nurses to opt in to receive third-party solicitations or information from third parties, and then they contract with a broker to go out and then rent that list out on their behalf. So always work with reputable brokers. Beware of bot lists. If you're solicited to buy a list, or you come across lists that are being sold that you own these contacts outright, 90, 95, 99% of the time, it's probably not on the up and up in terms of getting proper opt-in for sending out to those people, sending emails out to those people. And I mean, you can think about it. How many times do you opt into providing your contact information to a privacy policy that says, yes, we want to be able to use your name in perpetuity and give it to anybody to own? It's not very common, and usually when it does, you're kind of maybe tricked into it. You don't know it's actually happening. So the problem with buying those kinds of lists is you run into typical deliverability issues, in that as you send out to those lists, you're going to get a lot of bounces back because oftentimes they're not maintained. There's not regularly people using those lists and reporting back to the broker who's bounced out of those lists, and they have bad email addresses. So you have those types of issues, as well as things called spam traps. So there's individuals and organizations out there that all they do is put email addresses out onto the internet, and they don't opt into any kind of email communication, and they maintain inboxes so that when they receive email communications from anybody, they know that's spam, and they do their part in reporting that spam to the various blacklists and spam tracking companies. So it's really, that's why I say it's best not to work with bot lists because you get a lot more of those types of spam traps and then rent from reputable brokers. And all that becomes very important because your ability to form good relationships with people is based on your reputation as a sender, as well as your well, it's basically your reputation as a sender, and all of that is kind of tracked, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
So Ian, a thought that I had too in terms of the deliverability is I've been working with a number of clients who have used past different CRMs in the past or other tools that are out there to send emails, and one of the things about these lists and even your own lists is that if you have a CRM tool that goes the extra mile in terms of validating the email addresses that are in there, that's extremely helpful. So you want a CRM that's number one, going to develop a list of people that only have an email address, right? And then number two, that before they send it out in real time, they're pinging that email address to make sure it's a valid email address before it ever goes out. And it's that's the difference between just kind of an email sender and a really truly enterprise class CRM tool for recruitment marketing.
Yeah, very good point. And so now you have your list, whether it's a combination of an external list or your internal list, and it's time to really segment that. And this is where we get into the meat of getting the most appropriate people. And you think about segmentation, it's really think about searching, whether you're searching in your own applicant tracking system, in your CRM tool, or in an external resume database. You're going to want to search for things like location. So if you have your particular need for positions in a certain geographical area, you want to target by location. Obviously, you want to target by experience. The more you can match the experience and skills searches that you do within your list, the more you can closely match those to the types of positions that you have a particular need for. Obviously, you're going to get a better response rate. So those are very important, as well as opt-in data, right? So you may have a talent network where people have opted in to hear about general management jobs, and you've got some general management positions that you're trying to hire for, and you have a particular need for. Use that opt-in data as a way to segment. And again, things like past analytics. If you're regularly sending out email campaigns and you do have an email system or a CRM system that allows you to look back and analyze those, you can easily see and pull data from people who have responded in the past or who have opened up emails in the past, and it gives you a better sense of, are these people active and are these people more likely to respond to my particular offer at this time.
And Ian, another thought here is that, in terms of segmentation data, we've got clients that are really finding out that their ATS metadata is really powerful data for segmentation. Now, what do I mean by that? It could be the types of jobs that people have applied for in the past. It could be how far people got into an interview and selection process in the past. So I just want to send out a mass email to everybody who's come and gotten to a second interview, for instance, right? And so if you have a CRM that's tightly integrated with that ATS data, then you can start to turn that past ATS data and metadata into some really powerful segmentation points as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the other point that I didn't mention here is really when you look at this data that you're using to create these lists for these one-time campaigns is really the same kind of data that you would use to create a talent pipeline. So in other words, many organizations are very good at centralizing their pool of past applicants and potential applicants into a centralized system and then creating pipelines for the types of jobs that you would be running these campaigns for. So if you're looking for general management positions, there's no reason to wait until you need to run a campaign to actually create segments within your database that match these. And these sort of talent pipelines or lists or folders can be very useful year-round in terms of understanding how many of any kind, one particular type of job family that you have available to you in your sort of house list or talent pool at any given time. It's great for planning purposes. So I wouldn't, I would say as you get into sort of creating these kinds of campaigns, if you're not segmenting your talent pool, centralized talent pool in the same way, there's a big opportunity for a lot of great information and help in terms of planning for future need. So now we talk about the offer, and we said sort of we all are dealing with, well, we're offering a chance at a job, which is great, right? You need to go beyond and think more completely about what that means to somebody. So first, you have the type of job that you're offering, and there's compensation tied to that. There's obviously benefits, and as an organization, I trust that you know what your best sort of lead benefits are and lead comp points are in terms of as you market your jobs to individuals. But thinking beyond that, what else do you have around that job that's important to people that will get them to reply to your job as opposed to somebody else's, or get them interested enough in your job to maybe reply and learn more, even though they may be already employed in a job that they're happy in. So, oftentimes there's things like upward mobility. You may have an organization that within this particular job family, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of promotion, we're growing. So that career ladder could be very important to someone who's in another position. They might be happy in that they don't have as much upward mobility, perceived upward mobility. We're at work most of our waking hours. So what kind of sort of community do you offer or is inherent to your particular employer brand in your workplace? What kind of lifestyle benefits are offered? Are there things like free dry cleaning, or what kind of benefits around community and lifestyle that can really make that offer more compelling, and how is that going to contribute to someone's self-worth or purpose? Are these people working on projects that are meaningful beyond just the business aspect, but maybe within the larger scope of the world and the community around us? Those are points that can be very, very compelling in crafting an offer that's going to get people to respond. So I urge you to, before you start writing an email, to really think about the offer in terms of creating one or two sentences that really encapsulate the offer. And I would also encourage you to think about making it time-bound. In other words, making it something that is not going to be here 2 weeks from now, or potentially could not be here 2 weeks from now. That element of timing within the offer is going to incite someone, make someone more likely to do this today versus saying, oh, well, those jobs are out there, maybe I'll do it next week or the week after. Because as soon as someone closes that email out, you know how your email box is, it fills up and they're unlikely to get back to it. So think about it in one or two sentences before you ever start writing the email. And I've just got a couple of examples here. Which one would get you to respond? A data analyst 2 with great pay and benefits, or a limited time chance to work for some of the top data scientists for a cutting edge company in North Carolina's beautiful and vibrant research triangle. Right? Which one would you respond to? I think it's pretty obvious, and that's an example of really digging into that job and understanding what are the key points and making it very compelling. And then sort of the more famous one, would you rather be CEO for the number 2 hardware and software manufacturer in the world, or as Steve Jobs infamously said to the CEO of Coke as he was trying to woo him over, do you want to go sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or do you want to come with me and change the world? So really think about your offers before you ever get into the creative writing of the particular email itself. So from a creative standpoint, subject lines, very important. From a size standpoint, you really don't want it to be more than 50 characters because there's a hard cutoff with most email clients that you get over 50 characters and they become truncated. And then it's easy to test these things, and tests have shown that between 28 and 39 characters are optimal in terms of open rates. So if you can keep something within 28 to 39 characters, that's important. Always remember you're competing with hundreds of other emails, so you really want to be creative. Um, you want to, one thing that can boost your response is personalization. So, for example, if you had a subject line that was "Come work for us," and you added the word "Jim, come work for us," you would get a higher, in most cases, a higher open rate by just adding that personalization. And then as you create these subject lines, always remember your brand. So no matter how creative you get, no matter how clever you get, don't sacrifice your brand to try and get someone to open an email. So always keep in mind what your employer brand is and try and stay within this. Obviously, if you're an organization like Southwest, you could be a little bit more clever, a little bit more glib, and that's okay. But you want to stay within your own brand. And then importantly as well, always ensure that when someone opens up the email, that subject line is paid off. So in other words, you don't have a subject line that really doesn't get paid off within the email so that someone opens it up and sort of feels tricked into opening the email because, at the end of the day, they're not going to follow through and reply or click. Spam triggers, you want to be careful of certain words that can trigger spam traps or spam filters. I didn't list any of the words here because I think as emailers we tend to get hung up on those. The reality is that largely, spam filters these days are very sophisticated and they don't work completely off of keyword triggers. And what do I mean by a keyword trigger? Something like work from home could be a spam trap trigger for a recruiter. Because there's been plenty of emails out there that have been scammy and spammy that have used those words within them. Some people think of the word free as a spam trigger. If you put free subject line, that's going to be something that's going to trigger a spam trap. But the reality is most of the spam filters today really rely on the reputation of the sender mostly. So if you're working with an email provider that has a good reputation, you have a lot of leeway within spam trap words. But if you're interested in that, do a Google search of spam trap words. But at the end of the day, don't get too hung up on them because if you put free in your headline, it's really not going to trigger a spam trap if you're a reputable sender. Don't forget the from name when you're putting together subject lines. When someone looks at their inbox, they're looking at who it's from and what the subject line is. That from name can be very powerful. One example, a from name from Acme Corporation versus a from name of Shirley Jones. In many cases, that personal person from name is going to impact the open rate as much as the subject line. Because in many cases, a personal email from an individual is more likely to get opened than sort of a blanket email from a corporation. And it's intuitive, right? And it makes sense. Other way that from lines can be important and helpful is if you're trying to craft that 29-character subject line, you can use words that you're trying to get across in the subject line in the from line. So in other words, if you have immediate nursing openings, you can use your from line with immediate nursing openings, and then that gives you less characters that you have to try and work with in your subject line because it all reads together within the email box. So don't forget the from line, and then always be testing multiple options. You've got the capability of doing A/B testing with your subject lines. I would suggest that you do it because over time that can help you understand which ones are more likely to get opened. If you don't have that capability, mix up your subject lines when you're sending the same email to at different times, and you can get an intuitive sense over time if you're doing enough emailing as to which subject lines are getting opened more. It's not scientific, but it's better than nothing. Now, as far as the email body goes, biggest piece of advice, or the two biggest pieces of advice are it's a personal medium. So you really want your emails to be personable. You want them to look like they come from a person, and especially, and this is primarily when we're talking about sourcing emails. Sourcing emails where you're trying to get somebody to look at a job and apply for it. or reply to you and get more information about a job. Keep the text short, keep it simple. You may have great email templates, or you're working out of an ATS or a CRM system or an email system that allows you to just create these richly graphic and branded emails, and that makes you feel great because it's really selling the level of professionalism of your organization. But at the end of the day, we all, as consumers and as individuals, can smell marketing when we see it, and we are repelled from it. So when you're really trying to get a response from someone, you're better off working in a more personal letter fashion, very short to the point, than these sort of very branded. As good as you feel sending it out there, you're most likely going to get lower response rates. And it's a different thing when we're talking about nurturing emails, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But from a sourcing standpoint, keep it short. Focus your email around a singular objective. Don't have 5 things that you want people to do within your email. So understand, are you trying to invite them to apply? Then focus on that. Are you want them to join a talent network? Focus primarily on that. Make that the one call to action within your email. If you want to start a conversation, if you want someone to reply to you, to start a conversation about a particular job or set of jobs, focus it around that. I've got a sort of asterisk there around referrals. I think it's always good to ask for a referral no matter what when you're reaching out from a sourcing standpoint. So that's one where you can kind of double up on. But really, at the end of the day there, people can't deal with, especially these days, every year, the ability to read through and wade through emails. People's attention spans get shorter and shorter and shorter. And I actually work with an outbound email company that has a great analogy around that. And it's you can't feed a squirrel a pizza. So in other words, if you went to a squirrel and you just shoved a pizza in front of them, they wouldn't know what to do with it. They'd probably run away. But if you held out a little piece of pepperoni, they'd eat that piece of pepperoni. If you held out a little bit of cheese, they'd eat that cheese. And if you just dole out little bits of information, little bits of communication, you'll ultimately, that squirrel will have eaten the pizza. You really need to think about your sourcing that way. Really focus on the one thing at a time, and look at your engagement that way, and you'll be much more successful than trying to put the whole pizza into the email. So here's just an example. I wouldn't stand by the wording on this. It's not scientifically proven as a blockbuster sourcing email, but this is the idea that I'm talking about. It's just very short, very focused, and very personal. Hi Mary, I've used that personalization. I'm looking for someone who's interested in a data scientist role, working on some very exciting projects. This person would be a key member of the team and would be compensated accordingly. If you know anybody who might be interested, click here to learn more about the role and to apply. Very, very to the point, focused on one thing and one thing only. All right, so when we talk about, we've got people to focus on a very focused call to action. Now we talk about conversion. What's the best way to get someone to convert to what you want them to do? So in the case of an invite to apply, you want them to fill out an application, obviously. So if you're sending someone, once they click that link to your career site homepage with maybe a search bar for jobs, and you've talked to them about a data scientist role, it's one place to go. It's probably not the best, and you're not going to get the best conversion rates of visitor to applicant. Alternatively, if you do happen to have a career site where you've taken the time to have sub-pages that are focused on key job families for you, and you have a sub-page for engineering, and you're looking for a data scientist, and you send them to that page, and they've got some hot engineering jobs there, and you've got content around what it's like to work in the engineering department at your company, that's not bad. You've gotten them one step closer, and they're right at the doorstep. Now, the best possible conversion rates that you're going to get is if you create a specific landing page for that email campaign that mirrors your call to action. Again, what you're saying. We're looking for data scientists. Click here to learn more. Uh, go up there. They go up there. They hit the site. They see information, jobs, or the jobs that you're trying to hire for around data scientists, front and center. Has the same tone and look and content around what it's like to work for your company in this role. You're going to get a much higher conversion rate. Plus, you're going to be able to look at the conversion rates from that page that you sent them to and understand what percentage of people got to the page, what percentage of the people clicked on the jobs, and what percentage of the people filled out an application and ultimately converted into an applicant. And those are all really important measures to understand so that when you do future campaigns, you can plan for what kinds of responses that you're going to get, and you can also use those to as you do them over time to refine things, change things, and see how they affect conversion rate. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. Steve, you want to talk about sourcing versus nurturing?
Sure. So, we referenced this earlier. Two typically different types of campaigns. Campaign, this ad hoc got a specific need right now, and I would say, this could, extremely tactical, meaning my specific need is an immediate open position. I'm going to send an apply to that open position. So we see clients do this all the time. It's a really quick way to expedite your time to apply, right? So let's say you put a position out on the job boards and sit there and wait for people to apply. It's going to take a couple of days for it to be seen, read, and responded to, versus reaching out into a segmented population you think would wait as an applicant for that job and immediately getting some attention to that job. So it's a great way to expedite your speed to hire. But that's an ad hoc sourcing campaign. Now, it could also be a campaign just to start to build a talent pool, right? Where maybe asking them to apply for a specific role. That role might become, in another 3 months. Right now, starting to build the candidate database that you ultimately will want to nurture. So this then is maybe that one ad hoc outreach to top of the haystack and send out an email campaign to the top 2,000 people in order to start to build that pipeline, right? So you want to qualified candidates to specific jobs, qualified candidates into a targeted pipeline that you're working on for an upcoming specific opening. Nurture campaigns are a little bit more long-term, right? Oftentimes the sequence of messages. I got a really good one today, I'm going to tell you, from a technology company out of Denver, and it was beautifully done. It gave some information about their general industry and what it's like to work in the industry, and some really exciting things that their company is doing. And there's a lot of energy around the email that I got from them. So nurture campaigns are typically long-term. You want to have an idea over the course of time. Is it a quarterly outreach? And if so, what messages are you going to send out there? They're not to immediately get people to apply for jobs, but they are designed to keep people engaged, to create the conversation, to continue the conversation. So it's partly awareness. We're still here. This is what we do. The engagement, maybe move them to a call to action that's not quite applying for a job, but maybe it's giving you a little bit more information, that sort of thing. It's only reinforcing the brand, right? So if the brand of the company is that it solves people's problems and reaches out to the medical field and types of brands, the technology company, it's really what is the brand that you want to reinforce with that message, right? So you're keeping people warm. That's a nurture campaign.
Yeah, and this is where I get back to now. Here's where you want to get your branding, and you want to be more sort of have more rich content within there. And it doesn't matter if it looks like it's marketing, because you really can't execute a good nurture campaign that's going to increase awareness and really showcase your brand without using graphics and pictures and And the sense is, well, this is a really top-notch company. Their emails look great. The videos that I click through to are very good. This is where the branding and that type of thing comes in.
So part of the nurturing campaign, is that it adds value to that conversation. I'm as a potential candidate, I'm getting something other than an invite to apply for a job, right? If this is a large, say, retailer, maybe become on their talent list, I'm getting discounts. Maybe it's getting some sort of an incentive, give them a referral, right? So now by helping them out, not only by getting, giving them, other good news for them to follow up on, I've now got more skin in the game. I care about the company even more, right? It might be some sort of training resource, right? I mean, we see this all the time, even in we market our services, to be able to provide some level of training or some information that's going to help somebody professionally, right? It could really quick outline, how to get a job with this company, right? Or something around their professional development that could be relevant content to their interest, particularly as you get into more professional and targeted skill sets. Some information that kind of helps people learn about that. Maybe surveys to candidate profiles where they can update the information, they give you some new qualifications, let you know a little about what they've done in the past. Preferably these would then to build up that profile that you have in the system. That would then help you retarget later on. It could be, some employee profiles. Here's somebody that's doing some really great work in our organization, or somebody that's done some great humanitarian work. That's typical of the people that we work with here. And it might just be company news, right? And you certainly don't want to overdo it, right? So I said earlier, maybe it's a quarterly outreach, certainly no more than monthly outreach to this kind of keep warm nurture campaign.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing in there, Stephen, that you said is really make it valuable. Because if you're going to be emailing people more than once, you really want them to have a reason to open it up. Otherwise, they're going to unsubscribe from your nurture campaign, and then you're no longer going to be able to market jobs to them. So you want to really make sure that they're getting something of value. You can see that I put company news down at the bottom. It's not irrelevant to potential candidates, but there's only so much company news I really care about with your company. So really, you can do some amazing things with your candidate nurturing program, and in keeping those candidates warm and generating referrals and gauging their interest in updating their candidate information for you. You just have to be creative, and it's not something that's quick. You got to put some thought into it, but you can create some great sequenced campaigns around that. So talk a little bit about spam. And this isn't a spam clinic, but we just kind of have to touch a little bit on some things to keep in mind in terms of spam. Don't ever send emails unless you use an opt-in list, right? So you have either they've opted directly in for you to send them emails, or they've opted into a third party for third parties to send them emails. Always have your email state the clear purpose of the email. Be very upfront with that. Always show your company name, address, and phone number on every email, because you have to provide them. This is sort of the Canadian spam law. You have to provide them a way to contact you, and it's also it speaks to your reputation. Putting your name and your email and your contact information on each, as a company, on each email. And then have an easy opt-out and unsubscribe. And as Stephen said before, if you're working with a reputable CRM system, or you're working with a good email sending system, they're gonna have that sort of built in, so you're not going to be able to send without it. Talk a little bit about Canada. The Canada anti-spam laws are a bit more stringent than the U.S. ones. You have to have a positive opt-in even for the first email. So contacting someone without a record of a positive opt-in, that could be even your first outreach to someone. Say, hey, are you interested in jobs like this that you've come across through friend of a friend or word of mouth or internal referral? Canada, if you don't have that, you are technically out of bounds with the CASL laws. And you need to use a system that's really going to retain that opt-in information. You have to be able to prove it. You have to be able to keep track of things like this person gave me a business card at an event that we went to. You need to track that within Canada. So Canada's a little bit, there's good reason to kind of avoid Canada right now, to be quite honest with you, in terms of this type of mass campaign. But if you're going to do it, just make sure that you have very positive double opt-in on every single email. And just in general, when you send something out, is it something that you would appreciate getting as an individual? Don't flood people's inboxes and stop sending emails when they tell you to stop. It's very common sense. So metrics, there's some key metrics for emails. We'll talk a little bit about that, but at a high level, always start macro when you're looking at the metrics for these things, and then work your way down to the micro. So you want to start with things like open rates, because an open rate is it's going to measure what the general interest is in your offer and how good your subject line is, right? So before really getting down into the click rates and things like that, take a look at the open rates and just as a broad industry average, it's about 7.9% for the recruiting and staffing industry of open rate, and that can vary wildly. So that's not always going to be your experience. It could be much higher. In fact, we've got some examples coming up where it is much higher, or it could be lower. But the good news is that's increased from 3+% a few years ago. So the good news is candidates are more willing to open up your emails and take a look at it. Next, look at the click rate. Click rate is kind of the bottom line. How successful was your overall list and your creative and your offer in incenting someone or inciting someone to reply or respond? And again, averages, broad industry average for recruitment and staffing is 1.7%. And then another big one is conversion rate. So how many of the people who clicked on a particular email turned into applicants or downloaders or whatever it is that you particularly wanted them to do. The percentage of hire. So ideally you're working with a system that can track an email from who sent it to when it was sent to how many people opened it to how many people clicked on it to what your conversion rate to applicant was, and it's tied into your applicant tracking system so it can see how many people you hired from that. That is, I think what everybody would love to see, that kind of closed loop. It's something that we provide at Telemetry. It's not always available if you're using multiple tools and multiple systems, but if you've got a good integrated system, you can get that. Another big one we've kind of touched on is deliverability. How many emails bounced? So you want to see your bounce rate go down over time. The more you email your lists, the more that the people that are uninterested and the bad emails that might be in there are going to get cleaned out, and you're going to get high deliverability. It's important too because this is a big trigger for your email providers. If they see high bounce rates on the emails that you send out, you're likely to get warned. And if you're not lucky, and if it happens over time, you consistently send out emails with high bounce rates, your email provider is going to get marked, and ultimately your reputation will be hurt because of it, because those high bounce rates are a big trigger in terms of you as a low reputation spam sender. So your email providers won't stand for it. They'll ban you from sending, and your reputation will be hurt because of it. So you really want to make sure that your deliverability is always high. Keep in mind, though, that email addresses churn at a rate of about 25%-ish per year. So you're typically going to have about 6% per quarter of your email addresses kind of go bad. People change email providers, they move, whatever it is, the emails go bad. You also want to see your percent of unsubscribes, the people who unsubscribe to your email list, um, go down over time. You want that to be low. And again, this is a good reason to run those kinds of nurture campaigns and to run frequent sourcing campaigns. So you always got a purified list where um, where your response rates are going up because you're getting to the people who are most open to hearing from you. And just a little word about unsubscribes. Always try and, if you can, segment your unsubscriptions so that if someone clicks unsubscribe, they have a choice. They can unsubscribe from all emails from you. They can unsubscribe from content emails for you or your nurturing type emails, or they can unsubscribe from job offers. So that when someone goes to unsubscribe, they have an opportunity to do something less than cut you off completely, because you don't want to lose potential candidates within your lists and your talent pools because they're not interested in just one particular email that you send.
Yeah, and that's a really good point too. And I think if you have a really good CRM tool, so this activity should not be done off in a corner someplace that's unrelated to the rest of your sourcing and attraction team, right? Your CRM should be smart enough to track who's getting these regular nurture campaigns, who has unsubscribed. You should be able to build into your target something that says, listen, don't send a nurture campaign if they've just been reached out to by a recruiter in the past week or so, right? So that you have a really good ability to manage how many emails are going out to folks.
Yeah, absolutely. In a perfect world, you've got your talent pool centralized and all your recruiters and sources are working out of it. You click into a particular candidate, you're able to see what emails they've gotten both on a sourcing and a nurturing standpoint, but also what individual personal email outreach that's been happening. You can see quickly whether that candidate is an engaged candidate that is open to your emails and is open to hearing from you, or whether they're not. So perfect world, that's what we shoot for. Not always there available for us at any given time, but that's what we should be working towards. So metrics. So why are these metrics important? Well, one of the reasons I talked about, you can use these metrics to understand what your response rates are, what your open rates are, make changes and refine them. So you can make changes to a subject line and send it out again and see if you get a better response, and you can start to get better performing campaigns and targets, right? It's also great for planning. So if you're planning a campaign, let's say you need to hire 250 store personnel in a specific region quickly. All right, so how many do we have enough in our talent pools within that region to fill those positions? If you know your conversion rates, you can kind of work that out. So in this example, you can back into that by if you know that your click-through rate is 17% and your conversion rate is 3%, then it would take you 50,000 candidates to get 255 applicants. So it's a good way, if you know those kinds of things, it's a good way for planning. And then if you do need to go out of your talent pool, your proprietary talent pool, and rent lists to try and get that, you can figure out what the cost effectiveness of that is. So let's say that same list costs you $250 per thousand contacts, which is a typical kind of cost. It can be double that. It can be less than that, but it's kind of ballpark. Well, 50,000 names would cost you $12,500, and at $12,500, if you could figure that you're going to get 255 likely responses or applicants from this, that works out to $49 per applicant. So if you know your cost per applicant in aggregate is $12, then that $49 represents maybe an investment that is not as good as it may seem, and you might want to look elsewhere to fill those needs. Same token, if it's $490 per applicant, then this is a great way to go.
So we wanted to share, a quick story or two with you on some clients that we work with. Now, from a resource perspective, a lot of larger companies now do have some folks in their sourcing team that are specialists in recruitment marketing and can run, fairly decent-sized campaigns. That said, we've found that with our larger clients who get up to, tens of thousands of folks that they want to send emails to, we're going to come alongside with them and make sure that it's done right so that the technology holds together right, and all of the issues that we've talked about earlier. So, we have a client as a national wireless company, and one of the things that they like to do is, they are committed to hiring veterans. It helps, with their business. They find, a higher quality of applicant coming out of veterans for some of the key areas in their organization. And it's just a great thing to do also from a marketing perspective. So they specifically like to reach out around Veterans Day and just, send out a nurture campaign that also has some calls to action to join a specific military-oriented talent network, or to, search and apply for jobs that, that are tracked to their military skills, for instance. So, one recent campaign that we ran around Veterans Day for them saw 347,000 emails sent out, and of that, 95% of them were delivered. Right, so you can talk about, this shows you some of the examples of the metrics that, that Ian had talked about earlier. 48% of those actually got opened, and 6% clicked onto the landing page. So they had that, that experience that the company wanted them to have from a branding perspective, right? We only saw a 0.8% bounce back. There was only a 0.1% of spam reported, and only 1.7% of all of that unsubscribed. So, folks were able to sign up to a talent network, or they were able to search for and apply to jobs, right? So from January 5th through March 26th of last year, for instance, after a couple months after this specific campaign was run, they had 8,590 clicks to join the talent network, and 3/4 of those actually, 0.75% actually completed that talent network. So extremely good, probably not to be expected by everybody, measures here, and it's a good example of the types of not only activity that can happen, but also metrics.
And it's a good example of volume. Okay, so we've got a couple of different kinds of positions that we recruit for. There's the volume positions where we're constantly looking for these, and we want to have a ready pipeline of these types of applicants available. And this is volume camp. The next one that we have is a bit of an example of using these sourcing campaigns for very specialized recruiting targets, right? So we have one client. They're a large hospital system. They had about 4 hospitals that were having a hard time getting nurses fast enough. All right, it was creating some quality of care issues. They were in the process of migrating from one applicant tracking system to the other, so they were dealing with some internal pressures to get these positions filled in a time frame that their entire recruiting process was a little bit in flux. So we worked with them to send out a campaign to 300 contacts, and that was a combination of their internal ATS past applicants, as well as talent network members, as well as lists that were sourced for them from list brokers. Created the landing pages, managed them. The campaign just took place 3 weeks ago, over 3 weeks of the holiday, and ultimately it resulted in 1,700 nursing applicants in a situation where they didn't have a lot of levers they could pull in terms of, we've got to get these nursing jobs filled. We've got sort of a static process here for filling our jobs, and it's not working in this one area. So let's use a sourcing campaign to see if we can get some movement in. And they did get a lot of movement in that, and it's very, very kind of recent, so we don't have full analytics on that to share. But just another example of in specialty hiring where you can use these campaigns regularly to fortify the other kinds of attraction and sourcing activities that you're doing. So that's about it, and I think we are right up at the end here. So I want to thank people. We've got a few questions, and again, what we'll do is follow up with you individually on these questions. We have your email. Apologize that we ran out of time here. But I would just invite everybody, if you're interested in learning more about our telemetry CRM and sourcing solutions, you can go to telemetry.com. You can reach out to me personally if you'd like some more information, and you can learn about our entire recruitment marketing platform, which deals with everything from attraction, with job distribution to social networks and recruitment agencies, all the way through sourcing solutions, CRM solutions for doing these kinds of campaigning, and also candidate experience solutions for creating those types of landing pages that we talked about, and global career sites and career site structures that you can maintain within your recruiting and HR department. So thanks everybody for coming. Had a great time. Thank you, Steve, for joining us, and for everybody here at Telemetry, have a great day.
Thank you.